Money! 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 Ah!
Money! Like it or not, we live in a society, and we need money in order to have things, including audio. In fact, I believe it was Aristotle who said it's the way we exchange money for goods and services that separates humans from animals. As a purveyor of high-quality audio devices, I believe that every person deserves to experience good audio. But I realize people don't always have money in the budget for high-fidelity listening devices. But music is amazing, and everybody should listen to it. And having a nice-sounding piece of gear to experience music through can help you fall in love with your favorite songs all over again. Some people are getting by with a cheap pair of earbuds from Walmart and are totally content with just using those, and that's perfectly fine. But for people who want a nice pair of headphones, they might just Google something like Best Headphones 2024 and then have a brain aneurysm when they learn that high-quality audio can get really expensive. But fear not, because I know for a fact there's great sounding gear for cheap. And this is a video showcasing some of my favorite affordable audio gear. All of these are certified hood classics that are well respected in the audiophile hobby, or at least are well liked by me. I've been wanting to do a roundup style video for a while now, and now I'm finally doing one. This isn't gonna be like the rest of my reviews. I'm gonna be a little less critical here and basically just talk about why I like each of these entries. Another quick note, not everything on this list is going to be conventionally cheap. Some things are on here because I think they have a really good price to performance ratio, but may be objectively kinda expensive. But we're gonna start off with something actually cheap, and these are my absolute favorite pair of cheap headphones. I've done a full review of them before. It's the honse KPH30i. We're starting off strong with the brand from the land down under, and by that I actually mean north in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I don't understand how geography works. honse. They've been in the game for a long time, and they're the king of making cheap headphones that have absolutely no right to sound as good as they do. The Porta Pro, the KSC75, and the honse KPH30i, just to name a few. These are $30 US, something that realistically anybody could afford. And yeah, you can tell how they get them so cheap. I mean, this is just cheap plastic. Build-wise, there's not really much going on. But they do have a rubber suspension strap, which I like. They're on-ear headphones, which I know some people aren't gonna like, though they do have a little rubber bushing in here that allows them to adjust a tiny bit. Sound-wise, though, these are great. They have a punchy and warm sound signature. I do really like how the bass on these sound. The bass on this absolutely slams, and the treble is really smooth. See right here, they have a little bump in the mid-bass to the low mid-range, and that's what makes things sound warm and punchy. These are open-back headphones too, so they actually have a little bit of soundstage. You don't even need an amplifier for these. They run out of basically anything that has a headphone jack. And for 30 bucks, I've heard headphones that cost way more sound considerably worse than these. That's not to say that cheap headphones beat out super expensive headphones. It's just some expensive headphones fucking suck. You can even find deals on Amazon and Drop where they go for cheaper. Seriously, these sound way better than you might think at first glance. Also, I have to go on a bit of a tangent here before we get into the next entry. I'm in the US, so all of these prices are in Eagle bucks. I've had like at least 10 different viewers reach out to me on various videos to tell me that whatever I'm reviewing costs something different in their country. Yes, I'm American. We use US dollars here. It is not my fault that I don't know how much $30 is in Filipino pesos, okay? What do you expect me to do? List the price in every currency around the world? Okay, so it looks like $30 is about 1,700 pesos. On to the next entry. We're getting a little more expensive, but up next is my favorite pair of closed-back headphones, the Sony MDR7506. So these go for about $90 to $100 if you get them brand new, which is pretty good. These headphones have been around forever. They were released back in 1991, and Sony's never updated them, and I think they're well worth that price. Though, there is one thing I want to bring to your attention: used equipment. If you go on eBay right now, you'll find some seriously great deals on a used pair of MDR 7506s. I got mine used for 50 bucks. Seriously, there's tons of great deals on eBay, and they'll likely be in great shape because the build construction of this headphone is super robust and sturdy. They do the foldy-uppy thing, and they adjust easily, and they swivel enough to fit your head. I also find these to be reasonably comfortable, though there are more comfortable headphones on the market. These things last forever though. Like, there's pairs that were built in the 90s that are still hanging around today. Sound-wise, these are really balanced. Their treble is a little bit spicy, but it's not overly bright or sibilant. It's just that the treble extension on these is really good, so it sounds kinda airy and sorta S-y. Plus the mids on these are super clear, and the bass extension is excellent. One thing I really like about the MDR 7506 is how long it takes for bass hits to decay. If you listen to music that has big orchestral bass drums, you can just hear how long those hits last. The fact that they're so balanced makes them versatile for all genres of music, and it's a good good headphone for mixing and mastering. In fact, that's what they were originally designed to do, and these are still used in studios everywhere. Plus, they're really efficient, meaning they don't require an amplifier to drive. I mentioned earlier that they sound really good with music that has big orchestral bass drums. One of my favorite recordings of all time is Pictures at an Exhibition from the Ukrainian National Symphony. Go and listen to that with the pair of Sony MDR 7506s, and you are in for a really good time. I really like these, easily my favorite pair of closed-back headphones of all time. Definitely look into getting a used pair for cheap. 50 bucks, seriously, 50 bucks. That's how much I paid for them, and the seller was even nice enough to include the case that they came in. This was just an absolute steal. Seriously, be on the lookout for deals on used pairs of 7506s. That's 63.39 Canadian dollars. Cool, moving on to the next entry in this video. Okay, so sound. It's basically just airwaves entering our ear canals, and then our brains interpret that as noises and stuff. There's a lot of different ways to push air and make sound. A lot of headphones have dynamic drivers in them, which is that cone-looking thing that you might think of when you're asked to picture a speaker in your head. This circular membrane moves back and forth to produce the sound. It's a coil of wire and a magnet, and when electricity passes through the coil of wire, it interacts with the magnetic field, which then makes the cone thing move back and forth, pushes the air, and makes the music. Dynamic drivers are one of the most common driver types you'll see in a headphone, but there's another type of driver a headphone can have, planar magnetic drivers, and planar drivers are super interesting. Instead of a single magnet and a coil of wire pushing the membrane back and forth, on a planar driver, there's this super thin membrane that has copper wire tracers on it that kind of zigzag back and forth, and then there's a magnet array on either one or both sides, and when electricity passes through the magnets, they cause that thin membrane to vibrate. It's super cool. Some viewers might be familiar with a company called Odyssey, who's well known for making planar headphones. Planars just have a different vibe to their sound quality. It's energetic, and it can be really resolving and detailed, but the timbre is noticeably different from dynamic drivers. It's a little hard to describe, but when you're listening to a planar, you know you're listening to a planar. A couple things planars are really good at is bass extension and detail. The bass on planars goes super low, and it sounds really energetic, but that's not to say they all sound bassy. They don't, but the quality of the bass is fantastic. So what's my budget recommendation for a planar magnetic headphone? It's the HiFiMan HE400 SE. These typically retail for about $100, but I do regularly see these go on sale for as low as $80 depending on where you get them. And 80 to 100 bucks for a big pair of serious planar magnetic headphones, that's pretty damn good. That's less than a Sony XM4/5. Disclaimer, these aren't the original headband that comes on these headphones. I broke the original headband. This headband actually comes on older HiFiMan models. I had to do a little bit of DIY to get this headband to fit. Don't worry about it. It wasn't the headphones' fault. I'm just a klutz, and I forgot where I set them down, and I sat on them with my ass. I'll be straight up. The build quality on these isn't the best. All the parts on these feel really loose and shaky. The parts themselves feel okay, it's just not put together particularly well, and this build is mostly plastic. It's not terrible, but it isn't great. It's still a lot better than Grado's though, although that's really not saying much. Grado, your stupid chunky cable confounds me so. Although they are super comfortable in my opinion, though the headband that normally comes on these headphones is sort of controversial. Some people really love that headband, others hate it. I personally really like that headband, it's just I broke it. Oopsie. But these ear cups are massive, and the pads on these are super plush and soft. How's the sound quality? Brother, I wouldn't recommend these if they sounded bad. These aren't super bassy, but the bass extension on these goes super low, and it's rumbly, and it's tight, and it's clean. In my opinion, bass is what this headphone does best because the quality is just so good, even if it's not a bass-forward sound signature. Its mid-range is super clear, and leading instruments sound great, but the vocal region is noticeably recessed. It's definitely pretty veiled sounding once we get into the vocal region. And then these have a really sparkly treble that I know not everybody is going to like, but I do. It just makes them sound kind of detailed, you know? I especially like these headphones for listening to jazz and classical music. I hadn't used these in a while, but I gave them a whirl in preparation for this video, and yeah, I still really like them. They have that energetic planar sound quality that's a little hard to describe, but you know it when you hear it. And the detail on these is just great. Imaging and instrument separation on these are damn good for how much they cost. They're much wider sounding than the previous two entries, but they don't have the widest soundstage, but if you've never experienced a headphone that actually has soundstage before, these are gonna seem like, damn, that's wide. These aren't the most efficient headphones to drive. They're like 25 ohms, but their sensitivity is only 92 decibels. So you're gonna need an amp for these, but fortunately, I got you covered there. Stick around to the end of the video because there will be a section of this video for amplifiers. Also, I know I said that the build quality on these isn't the best. However, it is worth noting that all of the headphones in this video will last if you just take care of them. Don't throw them on the floor just to test their durability, obviously.
Hi-fi man, well you're about to become high-fly man.
Lastly, for big over-ear audiophile headphones, we have what are an all-time classic, and it's probably the most expensive thing on this list. You've seen these in my videos before. It's the Sennheiser HD6XX, also known as the Herder 6XX. You can't really call these Herder 6 Honjos because they're a little different, but I can't think of a funny name for these. I mean, they are a pair of Herder 6 Honjos, but they aren't the pair of Herder 6 Honjos. So let me introduce you to Drop, formerly known as Massdrop. Drop is an online store and forum that works with the audiophile community to create more budget-friendly and alternate versions of already existing headphones, and a lot of these special versions are pretty damn good. The HD6XX is a Drop-exclusive version of the HD650. Basically, these use the same drivers and tuning of the HD650, but they put it in a new chassis, and they made it way cheaper than the original HD650. Now, I wouldn't say these are cheap. They're actually conventionally expensive, but the reason I want to include them is one, they're an all-time classic in the audiophile hobby. Like, so many audiophiles I know have a pair of these, and two, the price to performance on the HD6XX is second to none. You want one of the best sounding audiophile headphones for the money, look no further. Out of all the headphones in my collection, I've used these the most, which you can probably tell by how worn out the pads are. I should really replace these, but I feel the worn out pads give it more character, I don't know. At the time of this recording, these are $200, but their pricing does fluctuate, so if you're interested in these, keep your eye out for when Drop has them on sale, which is expensive, yes. However, in my opinion, they're one of the best deals on the market for just how good they sound. These are next level. Build quality on these is fantastic. They're made out of plastic, but it's the super hard and robust plastic that feels generally really nice, plus the grills and the adjustment thingies are made out of metal. The comfort is also fantastic. They're super light and the ear pads are tremendously soft. They squeeze a bit when they're brand new, but the more you use them, the more comfortable they get. They're kind of like a new pair of shoes. You gotta break them in a bit. Sound-wise, they're amazing. They have that same really rich and full sounding mid-range that the HD600 has. The treble manages to also be really smooth without sounding dark. They aren't particularly bassy. In fact, there's a pretty noticeable roll-off in the sub-bass. But like with the 400 SE, it's the quality of bass that's great. They're very similar to the HD600, but they have a bit more mid-bass and overall sound a bit warmer. It's the timbre of these headphones that just make them sound the way they do. Headphones in the HD6 lineup all have this timbre that's really natural and pleasing. Instruments and vocals through the HD6XX just sound effortless. They aren't super wide sounding, but there's no other headphone that has such a natural sound to it at this price point. I love the HD6XX. These are 300 ohms and 103 dB sensitivity, so you are going to want an amp for these. Don't worry, I will have amp recommendations for you. Like, you could run these from your PC, but I find that they just don't sound right if they aren't being supplied with enough power. Okay, so that's it for big over-ear headphones, but I know some people might be looking for something smaller for on-the-go use. Don't worry, I got you there too. I have 3 picks for IEMs, and I'm gonna do it all in one go. So we have the Tongzu One, oh wait, I just thought of a funny name for the HD6XX. Introducing the Herder 6 Tex-Mex. Okay, so here are my picks for IEMs. 2 of these are gonna be cheap, and 1 is more on the expensive side, but all of these are gonna be under $100. So my 2 cheap recommendations for in-ear monitors are the Tongzu One and the EPZ-Q1 Pro. The One usually goes for about $25, and the EPZ-Q1 Pro hovers around $30 to $37 depending on sales and where you get it. Neither of these have very much included in the box besides the IEMs themselves and a set of ear tips. For how much these cost, it's amazing how good they sound, and both of them are very comfortable, but the EPZ EPZ-Q1 Pro is definitely more comfortable for me personally due to that semi-custom shape that they have. It conforms really well to the shape of my ear, plus they're more isolating than the honse. I prefer the tuning of the Tongzu a little bit more, but both are tuned very well. The honse has a more neutral tuning with a focus on the mid-range, though the bass and treble still sound good too. Again, I prefer this tuning over the Q1 Pro. It's just really good. The EPZ-Q1 Pro has that Harman style tuning that sounds energetic. You know, you got extra sub bass and you got a little bit of extra treble, and I think more people would probably like this style of tuning because it sounds more fun. However, if you prefer neutral tuning, you're better off with the Tongzu honse. They have different flavors of tuning, but they're both good. In my initial review of the Q1 Pro, I was more hesitant to recommend them, but I've used them a bit more since, and they've grown on me since I posted the full review. I actually really like these, and honestly, these are just good to have lying around as a backup in case your wireless earbuds or headphones run out of battery, both of these pairs. The next IEM I'm going to recommend is the most expensive of the three. It's the Truthier Hexa. Again, some people will find this entry to be conventionally expensive, but it has excellent price to performance, which is why it gets a mention in this video. It's $80, which is still on the cheaper end of the spectrum when it comes to IEMs. I used to daily drive these at work for a time, and they're super reliable. And yeah, there's a noticeable step up in sound quality compared to the previous two IEMs I mentioned. These have amazing build quality. They're super solid feeling, and they're a little heavy, but in a way that's really satisfying. Plus, you get more included. You get 3 different sets of ear tips, plus this case for storage. We also got a waifu on the box, which is how you know they're gonna sound good. Comfort-wise, I also find them to be comfortable, though I know not everyone will because the nozzle on these is a bit on the larger size. But I like these for how they sound. These have a very similar tuning to a popular IEM called the Moondrop Blessing 2, which sounds great but costs like $300 bucks. Yeesh. These are like a baby Moondrop Blessing 2. Again, neutral tuning with a slight emphasis on the upper mid-range, with just a slight rise in the sub bass for some added low-end rumble and to fill out the music. But it's not just the tuning that's great, it's the subjective things like instrument separation and resolution that make it sound better than the honse and the Q1 Pro. The timbre is just noticeably cleaner than the 2 cheaper options in the video, and it's the way all individual instruments sound separated that gives it an advantage over the cheaper IEMs. Again, if you want to experience a high-end IEM, but don't want to pay the high-end price, this is my pick. Plus, if you're interested in listening to the Blessing 2 but can't justify spending $300 bucks on it, well, you can just get these. And one more earphone recommendation, the Apple EarPods USB-C, and I actually mean it this time. I know it's kind of a running joke on this channel, you know, like at the end of every video, pretty much I'm like, haha, Apple EarPods are better, and while I'm usually joking, I unironically like how these sound. The USB-C earpods are definitely better sounding than the ones with the regular headphone jack because the USB-C housing here is actually an onboard DAC, which is basically an extra processor that turns code into music. It automatically applies some digital sound processing, which is a fancy way of saying EQ, and it applies it to the tuning of the earphones, and it can use that DAC to unpack lossless audio files. The sound on these is actually pretty balanced, and they even have more bass than the AirPods Pros. I'm not going to come out and say that they sound better than high-end IEMs, but these still sound good for the money and they're super reliable. This very pair I'm holding in my hands right now has been through the washing machine twice, and they took those baths like a champ. And yes, we have a microphone, we have to test it.
Check it out, this is VTube Studio, which is the program that I use to move this guy around. Oh, look at that, he's quite the handsome fella.
Okay, so now we can move on to DACs and amps and stuff. So basically, an amplifier and a DAC are 2 critical components in your audio chain, and basically anything that plays back music files has a DAC and amp built into it somewhere. And personally, I like having an external DAC and amp because it just adds an extra layer of complexity and depth to the sound quality. A DAC, also known as a digital to analog converter, is a processor that turns the code of the file you're listening to into an analog signal that can travel down a wire into your headphones. An amplifier makes that signal louder so that we can hear it. Your PC or Mac has a DAC/amp somewhere on the motherboard, iPods have them, phones that still have headphone jacks have them too. But there's external DACs and amps that offer better sound quality and more power to drive more power-hungry headphones. Like with the HE400SC and the HD6XX, you're gonna need an amp for those. I just find that they don't sound right if they aren't being supplied with enough power. This last half of the video is dedicated entirely to budget-friendly DACs and amps. First on the list is this. It's the Apple dongle. Yeah, this little thing has a DAC and amp inside of it. This is perfect if you want to use IEMs, but your phone doesn't have a headphone jack. I missed a headphone jack, and every day I mourn for it and curse Apple for getting rid of it, causing every other smartphone manufacturer to follow suit and get rid of it too, and now we all have to use the word dongle as part of our every normal day vocabulary. What is that? I hate that word! But I find this to be really useful in this day and age. Plus, it's super cheap and available. You can walk into a Walmart, pick one up for $10 and then be on your way. I wouldn't use this to drive an HD6XX, it just doesn't sound loud enough. Plus, the HD6XX just needs more power to sound correct. But if you want an external DAC for your phone and you want one for cheap, this is great. Like, seriously, this plus a set of MDR 7506s, put on Spotify, you're listening good. But if you're looking for a more powerful desktop amp for a budget setup for your PC, this is the one I would choose. It's the FX Audio DAC X6. This is the first desktop amp that I ever bought when I started getting into more serious kinds of headphones, and I used this thing a ton. You can usually find this for about $50 to $60 depending on sales and where you buy it from. I like this thing for a few reasons. It's built pretty exceptionally for how much it costs. This whole thing is made of metal, the volume knob feels really great, and the switches have this wonderful tactile feel to them that make them incredibly satisfying to mess around with. I love tactile feeling things, you know, extremely loud clicky keyboards, dials that snap into place, heavy and chunky feeling switches, yes please. It's not the best sounding amp on the market, but I find that the greatest difference in sound quality comes mostly from the headphones and the file type itself. I'm personally not super picky about amps. This can drive like 90% of headphones on the market. Going from the Apple dongle to this, it's like my more power hungry headphones just come alive, you know? I even put this epic sticker on it and I think it looks pretty dope. But maybe you're looking for something smaller that you can take on the go, but also act as a more powerful amp so you can use it for your PC when you want it. And I actually have two recommendations for that. They're the FiiO BTR5 and the Qtilix 5K. Both of these do the same thing, but slightly differ from each other. I personally like both of these, and they cost about the same, $100, which, for how small these are and for the amount of features they have, is a hell of a steal. Both of these are Bluetooth receivers, meaning you can plug your wired headphones into them, and now your headphones are Bluetooth. Plus, they even take phone calls, which is not a feature that I use, but it's neat that they can do that. The BTR5 is built a little nicer, plus it's thinner. It's pretty much made entirely out of glass and metal, and it's really smooth and lovely feeling. It doesn't have quite as many settings to tweak as the Qtilix, but its UI is a lot more user-friendly, so if you're new to the hobby, or maybe you're not even an audiophile, but you just want some nice-sounding gear that's convenient, you might actually prefer this. It also comes with a little belt clip, but I lost it. The Qtilix 5K feels more like a device that's aimed towards hardcore audiophiles who love to get into the nitty-gritty technical side of the sound. The Qtilix app has one of the best EQ programs that I've ever used. You can fine-tune so many aspects of the frequency response, you have both graphic and parametric EQ settings, plus it comes preloaded with a ton of presets made by well-known players in the audiophile community. All you have to do is use this little search bar, and then type the model of your headphones or IEMs, and then it'll give you a preset that's been tuned by Critical or DMS or Oratory. These are all super cool. The 5K is made entirely out of aluminum, however, I still find that the build quality of the BTR5 is a little better. Plus, it's also got an attached belt clip, which is great. You can also use a USB-C cable and hook this up to your PC or laptop and use it as an external DAC and amp for your PC. They also have 3.5mm standard output and 2.5mm balanced output. As for which one you should get, if you want something that's more user-friendly, I would get the FiiO, but if you want all the crazy EQ stuff, I would get the Qtilix. My last pick for an affordable amp is this, the FiiO Q3. I know some people might be like, what? 2 FiiO amps in one video? And yes, you're right, I personally just like the products FiiO makes. This is just a really nice, cheap amp. It's super small. It's a battery-powered amp that outputs a lot of power and can fit in your pocket. It's got 10 hours of playtime, which ain't bad. It isn't Bluetooth. It basically works by just turning it on, and then you can basically use the included USB-C cable they supply with it as like a super powerful Apple dongle. And of course, it also works with PC, Mac, and whatever you plug it into. Plus, it has 3 headphone jacks. It's got the standard 3.5mm jack, but also 4.4 and 2.5mm balanced outputs. It has a jack for pretty much the most common connector types. And once again, it's just built really well. This whole thing is made of metal, and despite how small it is, it has a nice weight to it and feels super solid. And it costs about the same as the FiiO BTR5 and the Qtilix 5K, $100. And And one more thing before I go, I know some people who are new to the hobby might be interested in EQ and want to know a good EQ software to use. Equalizer Oppo is the one I recommend, and the best part of this program is it's free. I'm still learning how to use this program. You know, there's so many options and things to mess around with. Really, all I use this for is the graphic EQ. That's all I need. But it works amazingly, and at least if you don't like the program, you know, you haven't paid any money for it. This software is amazing, so if you want to mess around with EQ, I think it's worth downloading. Now, some hobbyists are like super anti-EQ, and will often say things like, well, why bother with EQ when you can just buy a headphone that you already like the sound of? Which is an argument, but I counter with this. You can get a headphone that you already like the sound of, and then use EQ to tweak the sound even further until it matches your exact specific preference. Oh, so does that mean I can buy a cheap, crappy pair of Walmart earbuds and then EQ them to sound amazing? No, EQ doesn't really work that way. Think of EQ like this. EQ can't fix terrible sounding headphones, but it can make already good sounding headphones that might have a couple quirks in their tuning sound even better. I really like this program. You know, before I move on to this video's conclusion, I got something I want to say. No matter what device you use to listen to music, just take the time to enjoy your music. The ultimate value in the end is just having literally anything to play your music on. The law of diminishing returns kicks in faster than you'd expect in this hobby, where like, the more money you spend on gear, the smaller the improvements in sound quality get, right? What I'm trying to say is there's a big jump in quality going from a pair of cheap earbuds to something like a Sony MDR7506, but that jump in quality gets way smaller going from a 7506 to like an HD6XX. You will notice a jump in quality, but going from this to this is much more drastic. Why am I telling you this? Well, the biggest jump in quality period would be going from listening to nothing to listening to any music at all with a set of these. Music is amazing, and there's a lot of science to show that listening to music is really good for you. So if these are your only option and you need something to listen to music on, then buying these is money well spent in my opinion. And one more thing. There's people in this hobby who are snooty, pedantic assholes. Don't let the super snobby people scare you off from participating in this hobby. Music is for everyone, and any dickhead who tells you that you can't enjoy your music unless you drop 60 grand on a Sennheiser AG1 to fully appreciate a piece of music is simply not worth their salt. And that's it! These are the best, cheap, budget-friendly, good value audio gadgets according to me, and I'm right. Oof. Long video, huh? If you found this video informative at all, or just had a good time watching, I really would appreciate it if you would drop a like and subscribe. And, you know, since we're talking value, subscribing is free, by the way. Let me know if you like this style of video, and if you want to see more roundup content like this, or hell, even if you hated the video, or you just hate me specifically, leave a comment. Sure, being nice is free, but so is hatred. Okay, that's the end of the video. Goodbye.